Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy AJ, aka Mr. Cocoverse. Welcome to the Chocolate Life Podcast. Today we will talk about who do you believe? We're talking, and this can be taken in so many different directions. And let's just, you know, let's just get it cracking and everything. Um, let's just get it cracking and everything. Yeah, let's just get it cracking and everything. Um, yeah. So uh, we have a banner going across. For all uh, comments, suggestions, or questions. Send everything to the real chocolate life at gmail.com. And whether it's a question or topic, we will get those things discussed on the show. And we also have Chaplain K in the building. What's going on? What's going on?
Hi there. You're changing so many things up kind of quick on a sister. I'm not that technologically astute in this. You did a few things a little bit different tonight.
Well, I said basically set up a I had basically set up a secondary thing, due to technical difficulties,
Okay.
and yeah, so yeah, I had to do it right quick.
Well, it just took me a minute, but I could figure it out, and that's what I did. I mean, it took me a
Okay,
minute. It's like, okay, I can do this. So I did. I hear the music in the background. I mean, that's smooth.
yeah, that was one of the things kind of added, to
Okay.
kind of that's one of the things I'm
The
adding in.
ambiance.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I kind of I had just really just started the recording right before you got on. So yeah, I was basically talking about the title, "Who Do You Believe?" I think I might have paraphrased it. If
Well, that's okay because it can be who or what. I'm just gonna
okay,
talk about
okay,
belief.
okay, yeah,
Um, or what is it that you believe? I'll just start from there because it's kind of interesting, and I didn't know which direction I wanted to go with this. At first, I wanted to start. Well, let me just start with the little boys from yesterday, and then
yeah.
I will go from
You talked
there.
about that. You kind
Yeah,
of mentioned that earlier today.
I was driving back home, and I live beside a park and a school. Of course, it's a child-friendly neighborhood. So school is out, and I happen to look over in the park because it's a brand new park. So I'm always looking at the area where what the young people do skateboarding and that kind of stuff. They got all these crazy hills for them to do the wheelies and act like Tony Hawk and all of this other good stuff. Well, anyways, to make it long story short, I saw an altercation going on, and it was four little boys, and three of them were on bikes, and two of them got off the bikes, and one little boy was just pounding on this other child. And then this other little boy joined in. And at first I started to keep going. I'm going, no. So I backed up and I went to the park. And at that point, I saw this lady talking to them. And I don't know what she was saying to them, but she came back to her car and she said, they say they are relatives. Well, saying they relatives, I still wanted to know they were two little boys, and they didn't look like they were no more than 10. Okay, I could have their ages wrong because they all looked small and they were on bikes. And this one in this, I mean, it was two of them talking. One a little boy that was on the bike never said anything, but two of them just started engaging the conversation like they were grown men. And one little boy kept calling the other one, this little nigga, I'm doing. I said, he's not a nigga. And the little boy that was on the ground, he just sat there, and it was another little boy, I guess was his friend. He had a dog, and they just sat there. And I kept asking him, why were you beating him? I said, no, I said, why were you guys beating him? Well, and he went on to tell me, and I'm gonna try to use the little boy's voice. Um, my grandma told me if you catch him doing something, you such and such, such and such. And he was just using all kinds of foul language. I said, so your grandmother let you curse around her? No, I said, but that's what you just said. And he said, he was smoking dope in the backyard yesterday. And she told me to beat him down. I'm
Wow.
just going to use the word. And he insisted on calling this little boy a nigger. I said, he is, and I said it again, I said, he is not a nigger. I said, why you keep using that? What is his name? They never would say his name. And the little smaller boy, like I said, all of them looked like they could be no more than 10. But it was this mouthy little child. And he wanted to know why was I getting into. And at that point, it's like, okay, I'm going to leave because I'm hearing one little boy tell me that the grandmother said if he, because that's what's the whole thing supposedly, that he was smoking dope in the backyard. So, and he was supposed to be, like I said, I'm listening to two little boys talk, and I heard the little boy on the ground chime in. Supposedly they're brothers. Okay, so I didn't know how these three little boys could have been brothers, and they all look to be the same age. Secondly, it bothered me that an adult would tell two children to beat the other one. I said, well, if you're trying to help him, because he said, the little boy on the ground said, well, he was trying to teach me how to fight. I said, well, if you're trying to teach him how to fight, there should be a better way. And it made me think of one of my colleagues' children at that point, because um, one of my colleagues' child was, as she said, was horse playing at school. But that's not what the recorder showed. And I told the little boy that was doing all the talking and said the grandmother told him to beat this child and teach him how to fight. That's what supposedly, okay? I said, you do know there's a camera right there. And if that camera see you doing anything, they don't know that you're teaching him how to fight. They don't know that you guys are relatives. I said, but if they decide to take you in downtown to juvenile court, I said, they're going to do that. And they kind of backed up. And at that point, I was done trying to talk because the little boy on the ground had already said the other child was teaching him how to fight. And I'm going, it really didn't look like that, but I wasn't going to keep going back and forth with children. But what I found interesting is the other little boy who, when I told him not to call him a nigger anymore, he said, we all niggers. I said, no, we're not. I said, who told you you're a nigger? All black people nigger. And he said it with such glee. I'm going, that's disturbing for a child that young to believe, okay? Believe or accept, however you want to look at it. Because belief simply means you accept something, you
Right.
embrace it. And he embraced that, and they were using it just as hard as any grown men. And they were using foul language as any grown man. But I just looked at it. If he used that language with his grandmother, I'm just, he has no respect for me. But the lady that was there, which was a European, and she was said, "Well, I have to watch my children when I bring them to the park," and she was just trying to tell them they shouldn't be, you know, doing whatever they were doing. I didn't hear any of her conversation with them. But when I got ready to leave, the little boy who was giving me all the mouth, he told that lady some smart word. He said, "You just came over here and you were trying to tell us all kinds of stuff." He said, she at least talked to us. So I
Oh,
I left with two different things to consider. How did this adult approach children? And then secondly, the idea of the little boy who accepted that title, and they use it like it was nothing. But at the end, they kind of gave me more compliments than they gave the other lady, which I didn't know how to accept it in a certain way, because I didn't think they were as really. I didn't see them as being respectful to me. But when he told the lady that, he was hearing what I was saying. That's what I heard, because he said, "She talked to us. You came over here yelling at us." I'm going.
oh, and you know what? I'm a t- the best way I can explain this is the way white adults in situations like that, the way white adults approach black children in those situations, it's more from a um authoritarian, I'm going to talk, you're going to listen to me, uh before hearing anything. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I felt sorry for the little boy on the ground. I didn't know if they were brothers. I didn't know if these other children were just finding somebody in the park they can beat up today, and that's what their ritual was, because he just sat there and he looked very sad. And when I drove back getting ready to go to work, I saw him and the other little boy who looked like he could have been a Mexican or whatever, and they were walking in the ravine. On the ravine, when I call it ravine, they have a they play soccer in the ravine, and they also have a big walk trail around it. But it's actually a sewage, not a sewage. It is it's a retainer for water. A big area where the city has a retainer for water. That's what this area is, across from the park. And I'm going, this is a time of year that children, I mean, first of all, they're out of school. And then, secondly, I'm watching this dynamic play out. And then I'm listening to a child embrace such a negative, stereotypical, derogatory phrasing that, and yes, I
Yeah.
understand that all of the so-called be rappers now, they use that word and they call each other that, and it's supposed to be a term of endearment, but there is no term of endearment from that word. When we grew up, and I still try to, when I teach people in Hello Coco verse, I don't know if you're still in your 20s, your 30s, or your 40s, but I'm going to address a few things that has to do with belief. And, what do you really believe? More importantly, what do you believe about yourself? Because that's where I got the
Yeah.
title from. That this is what this little boy believed about himself. And I really didn't know how to wrap my head around that, because I don't know what that means for somebody who's calling themselves that derogatory name. I know what other people mean when they say that, but he equated it to say all black people are niggers. That's what he said.
Right. And
And
to piggyback on that point, I think I might have mentioned this probably maybe a couple of years ago. I'll never forget. We had just moved to Clarksville. I was probably about maybe three, getting ready to turn four. Um, the family reunion was gonna be down there. We was all gonna be down at grandmama's house and Aunt Nancy's, going down there. So I remember we were in the car, and we'd been dealing with this little boy named Robert and this other little, and I'm at first I thought Robert had a sister, but I think that was either like, it wasn't his sister, but I want to say it was like a cousin or another relative or whatever. But she was around the same age as me and our lady. And so this Robert and this girl never called us by our names. They just called us nigger.
Oh,
And so we're in the car and we're driving off, and we're literally getting ready to hang that right to, you know, head down Fort Campbell Boulevard to get on Highway 79, going down the road, heading down towards that way. And I'll never, we stopped at the stop sign. There was a little bit of traffic, and our lady hit me, and I said, "Stop, nigga." And mom turned around so fast, "Don't let me ever hear you say that ever again." And and like, I really did not hear that word again till I was almost a teen, because that's what Roscoe and Robberly and Nico and hey, what's going on? And, you know what I'm saying? Then on top of that, by this time, it was almost common in hip
okay. So
hop
are
at
you
this point.
saying that these other little boys call each other that? The
Oh,
relatives?
yes.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yes.
Because and see, you're talking about the slang using, but go back 15 years or 20 years before you were born. My mom wouldn't let us even call each other black. That
Yeah.
that was not
And I
a
was getting,
word
and
you use.
I'm gonna let you ride that because I was just getting ready to hit on that.
Well, because that was not a word that you used. You call you respected people, and you did not call. First of all, you couldn't call each other out their name. You couldn't call them like "oh nappy headed girl" or "oh black," whatever boy. You could not use that. That was something my
Hmm.
parents, not just my parents. I mean, my cousins, that just something you weren't allowed to do. You were not allowed to denigrate each other the way these little boys were denigrating, and it was so commonplace. So I'm looking at them. If they are under 10, that means their mom and their dads maybe 30 or 40. I'm going to give them 40. I'm not going to give them over that because young people are having children a whole lot younger. So 40, I wouldn't give them 40, not with, or 50. I wouldn't give them that much. That's probably grandparents' age in their category, in the language they
Hmm.
were using. I wouldn't give them that. And I'm going, what are these parents teaching these children? And secondly, how does a grandmother let her child use that kind of language? Or how does she teach her children? Remember, this child said his little boy was smoking dope in the backyard. That was his statement to me. He was smoking dope in the backyard, and he did something else of his. So he said, and my grandmama said, when he do such and such stuff to beat his, you know what? Okay, his donkey. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And he said it with such, you know, vigor. I'm going, okay. So this is the behavior that exhibits at home. And it's kind of hard to confront that behavior with little children because they don't know what to believe. Okay. And
Yeah.
belief is a whole different dynamic of word, because if you say that to religious people, which I used to stay away from that word when I taught groups, because I didn't need my group, who was a behavior health group, I didn't need them going to the trigger mindset. because I lived at that time. I lived in a town that was predominantly very religious, and it was very Catholic. So I was going to stay away from that word so they wouldn't assume when I said belief that I was talking about some type of religious dogma. So I started using trust. So what do
Mm.
trust? Trust and belief is kind of, the back and the front of each other. And neither one of them are based on truth. It's just what you have learned to accept. It does not mean it has any truth to it. So I'm also looking at those dynamics, because if these little boys that I saw are anything like the children that I used to minister when I was a part of a children's hospital, then at Christmas, that wasn't really a happy time for them. And I don't know what these children are. I know they were out of school, but the belief thing plays into this thing we call a season of Christmas. And for all of you guys that are
Mhm.
in the Coco verse, if you have little nieces or nephews, if you have your own little children and they're listening with you, and if this is a segment, you may want to just take them somewhere else, because we're going to talk about belief, and we're going to talk about some of these things we've been taught to believe. But but I'm gonna try to keep it so you will be able to just share with them if it's over their heads, and I'll frame it such as that, because I also thought about today, because I went to Cameroon about 20 years ago. And every time I think about children, I don't think about just children like right now. I think about children. It just goes into arena of thinking about children and how they've been treated over the years. So I'm not just focusing on maybe that incident from yesterday. I do a comparison in my reflection. So 20 years ago, well, it was really a little bit over 20 years ago, I went to Cameroon. I went to Cameroon. I was really excited. I was going to go to Cameroon, and I was going to the bush, as they call it, meaning I was going to go to the rural part of Cameroon. We were in Yaoundé, Yande, as some people pronounce it, and they took us to the bush for Christmas, as they call it. And I'm going, oh, good. I get to see what Christmas is like in Cameroon. So I'm really excited, because I was told I was going to the bush. So in going to the bush mean I'm going to go where the elders and everything is very rural. I'm going to see, because we saw a number of residents, and the residents were made of clay, mud, whatever you want to call it. That's how they built their houses. And I'm going, cool. So I took some of the pictures, and in the yard of these individuals' homes, they had cemeteries, because this is their property, and they buried their relatives,
On the
right there on the
property.
side,
Yeah.
because now they have entered into what the invisible world. It wasn't like you had to go to some type of stage cemetery that they do in the United States. So I'm looking at, okay, I'm getting to see uh, some indigenous Aboriginal concepts on how people live, so I can learn a few things. Long story short, the next day we got up, went to the church. That it was, because it was an open air church with a big brick wall in the front and on the side. But the opening, I don't know if they were going to put a top on the church or not. And that was one of the churches. Went to another church, which they call a high church. It was a Presbyterian church. All of the preachers had on black robes. I was I was really waiting for them to put on their white wigs. I'm going, okay, they're looking too much like the European. But what saddened me, because the preacher who came in, He did look like, in the out in the country, he looked like the regular people. And about 30, 45 minutes later, here comes the village to the church, because we've been there for a while. And the children came in bringing all of their toys to church. And then I'm going, this is not what I expected. Because all of their toys look very westernized. Now you read between the lines. They had dolls, and their dolls did not look like them. So I started wondering, what is it that they really believe? And we're in the bush. So now I'm
Yeah.
disturbed, because I want to know from the young people who are listening, what is it that you believe about this idea of holiday? And I say holiday and not just Christmas, because some people may be listening and they don't celebrate Christmas. They may be Jehovah Witness. I don't know. They may be Jewish, meaning that they could be the dark skinned Jews or the light skinned Jews. Right now, you got the fight going on where everybody seem to think only Jewish people are the pale skinned Negroes. Pale skinned Negroes actually became the last Jewish people. Now, that's pretty much like the people who call themselves Christians. The pale skinned Negroes became the last Christians, and now everybody who actually embrace this concept that they call Christianity, they're doing everything that comes from pale skin tradition. And I say pale skin tradition, and I asked a colleague a few days ago, if I were to ask you, do you even know the book that talks about Christianity before Christ? Would you know? And he just looked at me. I said, you do know Jesus is not synonymous with Christianity.
Mm.
And that may be something people have believed forever because that's what they've been taught. So that's what they trust.
Yeah.
But I would have to submit tonight to do a little research, because if you are like some of the young people that I used to work with in behavior health who were children, and work with children who, on this time of the year, they lose their parents or their siblings, this become a very traumatic time for them. So whatever they believed is distorted now. They don't have the imagination or the innocence that they had if it's been taken away. And I would have to ask all of us who are melanated, how did we get stuck on all the things we look at to celebrate just being with each other, with this concept that we have bought from pale skinned Negroes? Because going back to when I grew up, we were happy to see family, because we knew my mom was going to be in the kitchen. They were going to tell stories. We were going to help her cook. We were going to see cousins we had not seen until since the summertime. We were going to see family we had not seen since the year before. And yes, I like everybody else grew up with this idea of what we call Christmas and giving presents. But I think I was about 18, 19, 20. It didn't hold a meaning, same meaning. It's not because no I had tragedy, but I know people do have tragedy. And this time of the year becomes really hard for people.
Yeah.
So I would have to ask, what is it that you believed about this time of the year that made or make you struggle? And then I would challenge the audience to go back and start looking at some of these things that you hold with value, that's centered around or should be centered around being with family. Because family to me, I can celebrate that in January just as well as I can in May or December. And
Mm-hmm.
it's still not going to have the meaning that commercialization has put on this so-called a day which in fact was not embraced in this place we call the United States until the 19th century.
Mm-hmm. It
So
was
the
actually
18th,
outlawed before it was embraced.
well, the 18th century, it was not a part of their thinking. And then I have to look at some of the I'm going to go to some of the things that teach us how to hold this concept and this thought in our minds to say these are things that we need to celebrate. I mean, children watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I know they do, because I did. Unless they don't watch TV at all. And then you have to start asking yourself, what does that movie really mean? What does it, it's a comedy, but I mean, not a comedy. What does the cartoon mean? What does that cartoon mean and where did that cartoon come from? I would challenge you to investigate. I would challenge you to investigate uh, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And I know everybody like Ebenezer Scrooge. They've had it in 9,000 different versions. So I know even if you're 19 or 20, you have seen Ebenezer Scrooge at least once. Or you have seen, what's that? It's a Wonderful Life. You've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
All of these stories have underpinning where the rich has a visceral disdain for the poor or the outcast. Charlie Brown, uh, Rudolph, outcasts, misfits. They have a visceral disdain, but Hollywood has taught us very covertly how to embrace everything the Europeans put into context. If I was to ask the audience who was Oscar, I think his name is Michaud, and his last name is spelled Micheaux, who was one of the first uh, movie makers, if you want to call it that,
Mm-hmm.
movie
Yeah.
makers, and he used his art and his talent to tell our stories. And if I was to ask even some of the folks who call themselves movie stars if they know who he is, they don't. Because everything that we did in the turn of the century, it seemed to be lost. Uh, I think about the music that all of like the Temptations and all of those guys used to sing. I like the music because it was us singing it. I can listen to the
Mm-hmm.
music still now because it's us. We put our own spin on it. My point I'm making is we can move away from all of this stuff if we in fact find out it is not true. And I'm going to say if we find out because I want you guys to do your research for yourself. I want you to look at Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I want you to look at Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist is a very old movie. Google it. Look at Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist is about a child. Oliver Twist is based on a man called Robert uh, um, Blinco or Blinco. I may be butchering his name, Bincoe. And he was an orphan at 8. And that is what inspired Charles Dickens to write the story Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist is about orphans, children in Europe. But you see how we get brainwashed, and I'm not just talking about us. I'm talking about people around the world get brainwashed by this stuff we call Hollywood. Because they had more money than we have ever had in this country, that they hijacked all of our stories, or they belittled all of our content creators, and they they smeared and start using this as a form of propaganda. So many of the things that I'm talking about, like I said tonight, Oliver Twist is based on a young child, 8 years old. How does a child 8 years old work in a factory? Just think about that for a moment.
Mm.
And not only that, there is another old movie, and I want you guys to look up these old movies called Boys Town. I think a man named Bean Crosby or Cosby. I think his name is Crosby. Bean, no, Cosby. I don't know. Either way, he's a white guy. He's a white guy, and he was playing a priest. But let me just let you in on a secret. Boys Town was not the movie that Hollywood played it up to be. Boys Town was where little boys were molested by the priest. Boys Town was in Omaha, Nebraska, and they are just now getting suits and settling some of these claims. And remember, if Hollywood put it on the movie screen, they're going to change the story. Point I'm making is everything that you hold dear, you don't have to stop holding dear to it, but you do need to find the root of it, like the mistletoe,
Yeah.
like Winter Wonderland. Think about it. If our ancestors lived in hot climate, where did we get a Winter Wonderland story? Where did we get
That
mistletoe?
is a great question.
Where did we get
And
mistletoe?
and here's the crazy part of now, I'm just gonna go to the Winter Wonderland thing. Like, as a musician, I love the song, but I never even thought to even go back to the whole Winter Wonderland concept. And one now that you bring that up, I'm like, dang.
Well,
And I've
I'm
been playing
very
that song for years.
but I'm very inquisitive. It's like where did we get Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? There are no reindeers in the Americas or on the continent. Now there were reindeers and people used to eat reindeers in Europe. So many of these things are, or a Christmas tree. All of these things, I'm not going to get in quote unquote into the Jesus stuff. That is something for the future because I want you guys to actually learn how to critique everything around you. And then when you discover some of these things, be okay with it, sit with it if it does not make you feel okay. But at the same time, do your research and collaborate with people who are trying to go on this journey with you. Because we are on our way to new discoveries. We in a new dispensation. Everything that happened before COVID is now falling apart. Every other week, you see something falling apart. Think about it.
Hmm.
Those children over there in Palestine right now, nobody's going to tell them about the reindeers. Nobody's going to tell them about Santa Claus coming down the chimney. Nobody's going to tell them about that because, hey, that's irrelevant. Right now,
Hmm.
they're just trying to live.
And I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of that. So it's funny you mentioned the kids in Palestine. So I was helping my mom on with her computer earlier, and she was watching TV, and I think the TV was on BET or something like that. And so when the commercial came on, one of the first things it said, "Do you know what's happening in Gaza right now? The terrorist group Hamas is killing Christians and Israelis over in the Gaza region. Hamas is a terrorist organization that's just killing everybody. Are you going to support them, or are you going to support the effort to eliminate them?" And I was like, wow.
But see, at this
I was
point,
like,
it doesn't. It because the system is doing really what it was designed to do. So if you're seeing the United States acting the way they're acting. I'm not saying count it as joy. Some like the scripture may use that reference, but it's acting the way it's supposed to. Uh, the people who call themselves Israeli are occupying the land of Palestine or the land of the Canaanites. Those are just facts, regardless of who gave it to them. So to call the people who it is really their land to call them terrorists, they're just like calling us the N word because that's who they are.
Uh-huh.
They are of no value to the structure, but they're not the only ones. If you go back and start looking at the history, I've been doing that. I've been doing a deep dive on the people who came, who occupied the space of slavery with melanated people. So my point I'm making here is the concept of calling people black mean that you are at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
It means that you're at the bottom. If there is a book called When the Irish Became White. The Irish Became White. Look that book up. But while you're looking that book up, because it's another book you need to look up in your study, it's called The Original Folk and Fairy Tales of the Brothers Grimm. The Brothers Grimm put
Ooh,
all of these things that we're talking about together
nursery
in
rhymes,
to tell you that these things we call fairy tales, they were really
fables.
horrors. They were horrors. And many of them were more horrible at this time of the year than the time we call Halloween. People who came out of the caves and ravished the people on the continent who were the Aboriginal people of the area we now call Europe. They ethnically cleanse that area that they call the what they call it, the British Isles. They ethnically
Mm-hmm.
cleanse that. So we're talking about all of their behavior and all of their cults. And cult, if you put CURE, then you have what they actually participated in, because that's how you get culture from this particular cult. And whatever they deem is of value, they hold on to it. So they have been
Right.
holding on to their behavior, which is very sadistic, very hateful, uh, has no respect for females, has no respect for children, has no respect for the elderly. Don't don't like
Oh,
the poor.
can we put a pin in that right there?
Sure.
Okay, so as soon as you said they had no respect for the women and they had no respect for the elderly, it made me think about different scenes in the movie Rosewood. This old drunk guy who was just always talking about hanging people. This dude was telling his son so much stuff about, you know, I don't want you playing with that boy Arnett no more. But Arnett's my friend. No, you can't be friends with that kind. And then the lady who had made up the lie about she was beat by the N word and this and that. Like, as soon as the husband came home after he done witnessed all these dudes die because of a lie that she told, like, he just walked in the house and went to work on her
Mhm.
himself.
But everybody knew that she lied.
Yeah, because as soon as um, what was Big Mama name? What was Esther Rose Mama name? Miss Sarah. As soon as she said, many of y'all know that woman messed around, and a lot of y'all know that man was white. Bam! And
Fannie Taylor.
Yeah, as soon, a lot of y'all, it's like a lot of y'all that messed around with Fannie Taylor, and all of y'all know that man was white. Boom, and blew Miss Sarah away. And I was like, for the simple fact that they blew this elder woman away with no recourse.
But they had no remorse even for blowing their own women away. And
Yes.
like I said, this history is deep and it's long. It did not just happen when, quote unquote, they started enslaving Africans, because we're going to find out, most of us who on this continent, that North America did have a lot of melanated slaves. That's another disbelief that you're going to have to unteach
Mm-hmm.
yourself, because you have been taught that most of us came from the continent. Not true at all. And I'm doing, like I said, I'm doing a deep dive. I'm looking at the parallel of the slaves, the white slaves, and I'm looking at the black slaves. And when I say white slaves, I mean Europeans, because that's what they call them. They had started calling people white. However, most of the slaves were Irish, and Irish were, they were treated as bad as Africans. And then
That that part.
when they start changing all of the language so they can have melanated people, and they needed a scapegoat, and they needed more uh, allies, because Europeans were learning how to sue their 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 landlord, not landlords, their overlords, and their they were making money. Same way we have to do now. You have to sue to get respect. Uh, white, pale skinned Europeans don't respect anything else. You cannot reason with that kind of behavior or mindset. It's not, there is no reasoning. I mean, these people did some really horrible stuff to uh, the white slaves. Okay, and I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about, because many people like to um, do deflection. So they will use the phrase, well, people on the continent saw black people too, so it's their fault. I'm like, mm, that is not how this works. But if that's where you want to go, you go there. But at the same time, you don't hear any Europeans talking about white slavery. White slavery went on longer than black slavery. Let me say that again.
Yes, please repeat
White
that for the people in the
slavery,
back of the room.
white slavery, and I'm talking about white slavery here in the Americas, was outlawed in 1839, whereas slavery in the Americas for black people were outlawed in North America in 1807. However, the same thing that's going on now with children around the country, which is trafficking. They keep naming it something else.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been big business. So we do have to work on what we believe, but mostly what we believe about ourselves, that we can make it. We can make it, and we can do some things differently, but we have to address some of these things that hold us back. And many of these things our families have taught us have not been true, but you have to uh, kind of challenge that however you challenge it. I cannot give instructions on that until we have more conversations and you present me with a question, and then I present you with options. I will never tell anybody what you should do, because it's not my journey. So therefore, I cannot tell another person what to do. I can give you suggestions and let you decide, because that's what empowerment is about. We deciding what works best for us, not being the overlords, which have come from the mindset of Europeans. And the Europeans have been overlords for a long time, and it's everything they've done has failed because they are not creative. We are. And until we know that we are creative, so whatever we believed about ourselves, whatever false identity we have embraced, we can unembrace that. And starting with this holiday, you don't have to. This holiday create a lot of moods and emotions for people because they get sad. I know that. I've seen it. I don't think I see it as much because I'm in arena now where I'm dealing with people on a different level, and I'm dealing with people in an emergent situation, so I don't get to hang around the beds or do groups. But I still get to listen to people's stories. It's not the same thing though, especially when I'm dealing with children. I used to deal with a lot of children, but now I don't. So I don't get to hear some of the stories where they're trying to unpack their lives, and they need help doing that. So if you are in the space where you're trying to unpack your life and make sense of it, perhaps you may want to take this opportunity during this holiday season to just look at some of these things they told that you have been told, that you see on TV, that this is what this particular holiday is about. And matter of fact, what the name of the holiday. Just look it up, and just look at some of these concepts. They didn't come from us. So they're really not about us.
Right.
And I'm going to Cameroon. I was disappointed because uh, I'm on the continent, and if nowhere else on the continent, I should be able to see. Well, in Haiti, I did see uh, little black dolls, little beautiful uh, melanated dolls that people made. But I went to Haiti like in February when I used to go there. I went to Cameroon at Christmas. So, of course, I'm thinking I'm going to see something that's so amazing that I will cherish these memories. And I was just disappointed. And now I see more disappointment when I see the people who come over here who call themselves uh, African immigrants. And they come over and they embrace the whole shebang, which they call Christianity, but they can't tell me about anything that remotely looked like ancient Christianity before the European uh, distorted it. Because there is a book. Like, I mean, I'm good. I'm going to always tell you there is a book because there is a whole series of books that we need to cover when I start the spiritual podcast on how to make your own journey work for you. But you got to be willing to put in the work. And part of the work is you doing deep dives for yourself to make your own discoveries and make the reconnections, not only to the idea of your physical ancestors, but the spirit of them who made it possible for you to walk this journey that you're on now. I had a beautiful aunt who, when I first moved in with her, and I was in college, 1920, and she asked me if I wanted to put up a Christmas tree one year. I told her no. Now, if when I worked in the pediatric area, I put up a Christmas tree, I decorated it, I made sure children had all the things because I was doing it for them. Did I need that tree for me? Absolutely not. Did I have a tree at home? Absolutely not. But that does not mean that I have to shatter the dreams of children if this is what their parents want them to have. So we have to learn how to be versatile, but we also have to learn to know the truth So when it's time to break the truth to people, it's not as bad. Because the worst thing for young people to learn is old people have been lying to them forever. That is a hard
Man,
thing for young people to break through, because guess what now? You have breached trust.
that part. And that is very, very, very painful. And I remember when I was on my homegirl's podcast, and I was just basically explaining, hey, I took this ancient Roman history course, and the first time I heard of Saturnalia, and I was like, and I was just explaining everything, and I totally left. I totally wanted to hit on this one thing that I totally left out. Like Saturnalia is. You remember the movie The Purge?
Actually, I don't.
Okay, so the movie The Purge that came out, what, 2016,
I've heard of
2017.
it, but I didn't see it.
Okay, so The Purge is basically this one day a year where for 12 hours, like all crime is legal. And it's like from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Or is it 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.? So like people are getting home from work, and this one guy, he's a security guy. So as soon as he gets home, he starts locking stuff down. You know what I'm saying? And then this big siren goes off, and the purge begins. The purge, and leading up to the siren going off, the purge will begin in 10 minutes. And I'm like, when I first saw the movie, I'm like, what, I'm like, what is supposed to be going on? And as soon as the siren went off, you start hearing screams and stuff like that, and then you start seeing people get killed. I'm like, this is I'm like, this is an upper class, like like this is like a neighborhood full of like high dollar houses and mansions, and these folks running around with machine guns shooting people. And so it was this black dude. I want to say he was like a delivery person or whatever, and he was like, "Help me, help me!" And he tried to ask them people to let him in, and I think like a, a younger kid ended up letting the guy in, and then everybody was looking for this particular dude. And when they found him that he was in this house, they're like, "Yeah, we know he's in there. We want him. We got to kill him." And then folks just start converging on that house. And I was like, man, so what made me think, so I found an article, and I found this article like a few days ago before I even got on my homegirl's podcast. And it's about, Saturnalia being the purge. So um, for those who have seen The Purge, has the basic idea that one night a year for 12 hours, all crime is legal. Of course, instead of just robbing a bank to pay off those loans, everyone just jumps straight to murder. The whole point of The Purge is to allow this one night to get all their frustrations out to keep society running smoothly. And now this may sound ridiculous that and a complete work of fiction, but it's actually a lot of real. It's actually more real than you realize.
Well,
And
and,
so,
and, and as you said that, it reminded me of the movie Eyes Wide Shut, because Hollywood continues to put Hollywood do just the opposite of what black producers used to do. I don't really know what they do now because I haven't watched a movie in a very long time. They used to black writers and black producers, like, and I use John Singleton. They would write movies that talked about what we did and how we did certain things and based on a true story. Well, everybody is trying to do that now. And I think of the movie The Woman King, but that's a white lady who did that. And what she's trying to do is rewrite history. White people are good at trying to rewrite our story or tell our story. And it's time for us to stop even allowing uh, pale skinned Negroes in the room to do nothing but listen. They should not be trying to tell us anything about our story. If we don't know our stories, it's time for us to find, look for, search, do a deep dive, get your own story. We don't need to learn anything else from Europeans. Europeans have destroyed the world and they continue to destroy it with lies, murder, destruction, thievery, and most of all, continue to molest children left, right, and center. If you learn anything about this idea of Christmas, you will learn that it is a very dark side coming from. And many of these pictures that I looked at, it's an article that came out of, I think it's called CNET um, magazine or a network, and it has a number of pictures that are hanging in museums in Germany and Austria, and these are horrible looking pictures. Was there a movie called Hellboy or something like that?
Yes.
Okay, there are even images that looks like that, and these images that they got from Hellboy, my hunch is came from some of these old uh, artists, because this kind of artwork was done back in the 1800s. This is not new artwork. This is the stuff that places like Germany, um, Scandinavia, they called him Krampus, and I'm gonna spell the name for you guys who want to look it up. Krampus, Krampus. Krampus was Krampus is an interesting figure that all of these things that we talk about, and we like what's that, Miracle on 34th Street. It has become all of these different things that uh, Europeans used to do in the Alps, in the Alpines, all of these different places where it was very cold. And I just didn't. I just when I looked at all of this art, I'm going, they really did not like children.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm actually looking at Christmas a little different in the way it's being portrayed. So kind of like what Disney do. Disney have you believing all of these what they call them cartoons.
fake.
Many of those cartoons were done by people who were high. The little girl, Shirley Temple, when she was a little girl, okay, they used to do infantilization of her when she was very little, and they had men uh, picking her up inappropriately. This was a child. This child was no more than 3 and 4 when she first started in the industry, as they call it. And I remember seeing an old movie where she was playing Mae West, and Mae West was an old actress. Only thing I know that Mae West was some type of sex symbol. That's all I know. And they had this baby playing Mae West. How do you have a baby playing a sex symbol? But see, grooming has been going on a long time. Allowing children to
Man.
sit on an old man's lap at Christmas.
You know what? And so, oh, so check this out. There was a matter of fact, I looked this article up a few days ago, and I just found it again. Uh, it's called "All the Reasons Christmas is Actually Far Worse and Horrifying Than Halloween." It's written by a
Okay.
guy named Matthew Lavelle back
Okay, well,
2021,
okay, I'm glad you brought that up because now the audience can go Google and find out
and
some of these
the
things for
the
themselves.
And the very first thing you talked about, Krampus, that was at the top of the list. And then there was the Yule lads are coming to rob you and your house.
Hmm.
And three, the voyeuristic Santa watches you when you're awake and sleeping. And I'm like, and I remember writing a Facebook post probably 8 7 8 years ago talking about I believe this Santa person was a stalker. And then number four, sexual predators hide behind mistletoe.
Well, well, I'm gonna give this as a one for free. You do know mistletoe actually was a paralytic, and it was used to kill.
And is yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. As soon as you said that, first thing I saw, mistletoe is actually a parasitic plant. It latches onto a tree and then leaches nutrients and water from its host. Despite this, the tradition dates back to Norse mythology that declares
Hmm.
it is bad luck to refuse a kiss when under the mistletoe.
Well, but it's the Norse. It's not Aboriginal
Aboriginal.
people on the continent. It's not Aboriginal people here. So the Aboriginal people, we got to move ourselves away from that, uh, because those are the things that hold us hostage. How we have, and we can use our own imagination. Our imagination, that's where we develop our creativity. But we still have to wash our brains of some of this old stuff because it's been inundated and it's killing our brain cells. So, like I said, I'm still thinking about the little boys, but not just those little boys, but all children, on how children uh, have been taught to have so much expectation around this time. And this time has really have the spirit of what they call this time has been distorted and made into be something that it's not. And now we're getting to see, like this year, I'm not sure how I understand people celebrating Christmas while we have genocide going on. I don't. Um, Maybe other people can do that better than I can. But
Mhm.
Christmas was also used for the people who were enslaved, a time to run away.
Yes.
That was freedom
And
time. So this year, this time of the year, we can think about how we're going to free our minds from all of the stuff that have held us hostage, regardless if we are 21 or 91. We can talk about how we're going to start freeing ourselves so when the new year come in, at least we won't be holding on to some of the baggage that we had this year. That can be one of our goals, to get rid of
mhm.
some of the baggage that we have held on to. But I think we've been on for an hour, haven't we?
Yeah, hour and 8 minutes. But check this out. This one
Mhm.
last thing. So one of the 10, the last of the 10 things was those beautiful Christmas songs are actually creepy AF.
Well,
Eh,
because well,
let me let me get into the two songs that they talk about. What about I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus? Seriously, the pinnacle of moral authority of children is cheating on Miss Claus and or hooking up with your mom who just happened to be cheating on your dad with Santa Claus. The song ends after about 3 minutes,
but the
but the
song is
subsequent
actually. I mean, but the song itself is talking about I saw mommy kissing Santa Claus when in essence that was the person's father.
yeah,
dressed
They
up.
didn't know.
So they didn't know, the child didn't. So that's where the song. But that's not the like I said, I'm not looking at the new songs that people have written. Like as I said earlier, the Donny Hathaway, the Temptations with all of the beautiful music they put out,
Oh yes.
Luther Vandross, all of these artists who they made it their own. Because I like their singing, I can still listen to those songs, although it has no relevance as far as the so-called be person that they're talking about. Because the whole time I'm listening to it, I'm liking them because it bring back wonderful memories when I was a child. But at the same time, I'm also, I mean, like I said, I can walk and chew gum, so I can hold these two. Uh, I can hold the tension there and be okay. That I'm not looking at Old Holy Night the same way I did when I was 19.
Right.
I'm just not. Or Silent Night. I'm just not. Now I'm trying to teach us that we need to move out of that space so we can be free to create a new world for ourselves. And we can sit on the beach, or we can go to the mountains, and we can grow food that's going to help feed our whole community. That's what I'm looking at. And just like we created songs talking about that, we can create songs talking about anything else, because we are the arbiters of creating songs. We start, our ancestors did it to get out of slavery. They did it to talk about their their soul aching and how to heal themselves when nobody else was being a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. We can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not tied to that. It's like, okay, we're done with that. It's time for us to create some newness.
I
Because
totally
once
agree.
we start understanding the essence of Mayat, then we can have a whole new um, genre of people who begin to create music where we can participate in the holy of holiness. We can uh, embrace the energy from our ancestors and let them propel us forward to what we need to be doing next. So I don't have a problem with that. So, but we got to get through all of these details of how we got here and some of the stuff, the baggage we're holding on to, and try to help people that they don't have to be sad this time of the year, or holding on to some of these things that they may feel like they're stuck because that's what society has taught them. You can,
Mhm.
this is a time to be grieving. Yes, you can grieve, but you can also develop some new realities.
Yeah, and and like I said, a lot of the stuff it's been handed down and handed down and handed down, and nobody's ever questioned it.
No,
And so when somebody is posed with a question, the fact it's almost like as soon as your question is posed, everybody just gets on the defensive, just automatically off rip.
hmm well, people are going to be defensive because they don't want to do the work. For those who want to do the work, we're here. We're here to help you do the work, because when you learn the truth and you share it with others so they can learn the truth, they're no longer in darkness. For people who want to be ignorant, you just have to allow them to be ignorant. And there are too many people who just want to be ignorant. They want to hold on to it. Let them. It does not make it true. It just makes that something that they trust and they believe. Because we're going to start breaking down more content in context of growth and empowerment. And we must do that because nobody else is going to do it for us. The world has been trying to keep us held hostage for almost 600-700 years, depending on, however your ancestors got entrapped. And it's just time for all of us to free ourselves. It just is. But I appreciate you guys in the Coco verse. I appreciate you, Mr. Coco verse, for allowing me to continue to come on to your podcast. Um,
Oh, no problem, no problem,
Even,
no problem.
eventually, I will start um, doing something when I start this podcast where we can talk more about spirituality and just stretch the imagination, because spirituality and religion are not the same. And I'm going to say that over and over until it just sinks in that I'm not going to change the way I frame it. So, however you understand it, you might be surprised in what you may learn new.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Now, for everybody that has questions or comments or suggestions, please send an email to therealchocolatelife@gmail.com. That is therealchocolatelife@gmail.com. And that is all that we have. And this will be the last broadcast for 2023. We're going to come back at the beginning of the new year. So, everybody, enjoy your family time, be safe, and don't forget, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Be vigilant, be observant. All right, y'all be safe. This is Mr. Coco Verse, and this is the Chocolate Life Podcast signing off. All right, be safe, people.
Bye bye.